Welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather.
I'm Levi.
And before we get started, I have gotten a couple emails about the blue version of our branded mug. There was a pre-order for it. I think it was back in October. They told me that it would be in my driveway at the end of January, and then once I have all of them in hand, I can pack them up and send them off to you. So as far as I know, the timeline is still on track. If anything changes, I'll be sure to let you know. So welcome to our winter Q&A. We've gotten quite a few new subscribers since our last Q&A. And so I think that this is very good timing for this. There are a total of 19 questions. There were more than that on the comment thread, but a lot of them are like repeats or asking kind of the same thing. And so if you ask something kind of similar and you don't see your specific question asked, we figured that it would probably be okay. So I did get one as we were sitting down to record, so I figured that I would answer this one first and then we'll go through all the other ones. I've been diving down the fermentation rabbit hole lately. I know it's a great idea to ferment chicken feed. Is it ever a good idea to ferment goat feed? Is it even possible? Yeah, very often goats, if you want them to produce well, they need grain in order to produce a lot of butterfat and things. Now, I don't think that I would ever ferment the grains for goats. Goats can be very sensitive, and that's just not something that I would feel comfortable doing. Now, there is a type of alfalfa hay called chaff hay. Some people do feed that successfully. I purchased chaff hay one time, and sometimes in the bag, it comes bagged up, it's like moistened and it ferments in the bag. It will develop almost this spider web looking thing that made me a little bit uneasy, because if goats get a hold of mold, it's very dangerous for them. They can get, it's called goat polio listeriosis, and it's not easy to come back from. Not impossible. I've seen people nurture or nurse their goats back to health, but I think that it's too touchy to mess with, so I don't suggest it.
What about sheep? Will you raise them too?
What do you think? Do you like the idea of raising sheep versus goats? Does it really matter? His parents raise sheep, and so we do taste locally grown sheep intermittently with our goat.
I am very partial to the leg of lamb.
Leg of lamb is good. Is it much different than leg of goat?
It's more rich.
It is. Yeah, you almost can't eat an entire leg of lamb. We could mow through a leg of goat so fast.
I probably could, but that's
you
besides
probably
the point.
could. It's a little bit different. How could we describe the difference?
I don't know if we cooked a leg of lamb and goat like side by side, if they wouldn't come out more similar, but the goat seems to be much more conducive to like a pulled barbecue type, and the leg of lamb has always been more like a roast where you could like steak almost.
Yeah, he's right. It's a little bit closer textured. I wonder if they were cooked in the exact same way.
That's what I was just...
If that would be much of it. We'll have to experiment with that someday. But I have entertained the idea of getting some kind of fiber animal. This is not in like close goals or proximity. Eventually, I would really like to have some kind of fiber animal, whether it be a fiber goat, sheep, Angora rabbit, something like that, so I can play around with making my own yard. But that's a ways off.
I thought I heard something about pigs. When and what kinds will you get?
This spring. So really, once the weather evens out a little bit and I don't have to worry so much about small pigs in the cold, I'm going to get some feeder pigs. And really, it'll be just whatever I can get off of Craigslist locally. What I think I'll do is start with our local butcher. I need to get with him anyway to get a butcher date. So we don't butcher our own pigs here yet.
Basically because I don't want to deal with the brining and curing of all the sausages and bacon and all that.
Yeah, our local butcher does a very good job with that. It's not like we won't ever do that, but also in the fall time it's deer hunting season and we process all of that ourselves here, and we process a lot of our own goats here. So we already have, and rabbits. We already have our hands tied in the fall time, and so it's nice to be able to utilize our butcher for one thing. He does a great job. But if you aren't aware, a lot of times with butchers, you have to get on their books pretty quickly because they do fill up, especially in fall time where a lot of people are bringing in their deer and things. And so I need to go up there anyway, and if he has a contact for hogs, I'll use his contact. But otherwise, I'll just go on Craigslist. I know that I don't want anything small. Like, I don't necessarily want Kuni, and I don't necessarily want American Guinea Hog, even crosses. Not because they taste bad. They're delicious. But I'm looking for an animal that I don't have to take through winter. winter. So I want to get them in the spring and have them butchered in the fall, and I want to get them essentially as big as I can in that time. I'm not looking for like a target weight because I'm taking them no matter what. I don't want to take them through winter because a lot of animals, they just sort of survive through winter. They don't do a lot of growing, and so it might not be worth the feed necessarily for the few pounds that they'd gain over winter. So whatever I can get, that's the answer.
What are your must-have items for homesteading, like gardening, baking, preserving, etc.?
Really, you can do a whole lot with very little, especially if you're blessed with good ground. It doesn't take a whole lot to grow a lot of really quality food. It takes more like skill than things, if that makes sense. But I suggest everyone have at least one big pot that you can preserve with. You can use a pot, any kind of pot, as a water bath canner, as long as it's deep enough to put your jars in there with like a cloth or something on the bottom and cover the jars by about 1 inch. That's all you need. Now, a pressure canner comes in handy when you're canning low acid foods. Try not to get too into the gadgets really unless you find that you really need them. I do have quite a few little gadgets and I find that they are awesome for freeing up time, but none of them are really like must-haves. They just sort of make things convenient, but not like super duper necessary. I think a good cast iron pan is a good one to have, for sure. Just for general cooking, you can't go wrong with that. It's gonna last forever.
My brain immediately went to the etc. A decent set of basic tools, drill, saw, hammer, pliers, to repair stuff around the homestead that inevitably breaks down.
Yes, at the worst possible time too.
In the goat birthing bag, you have what is the most important items that some of us new to goat birthing will need. What should we watch for during the birthing process?
So in my goat birthing bag, what are some of the more important things? This is a little bit like the last thing, but with goats, you really want something to get out mucus from inside the lungs. If you have a baby that isn't able to cough up, birthing fluids and things, having like either a bulb suction, or I have one of those little nose Frida suckers that has a little filter on it. I love that. You can, and I've done this before, I did it last year, swing the baby goat by its legs to kind of use centrifugal force to get gunk out if you don't have something on you. And a lot of people will take a piece of straw and kind of put it in their nose, and it like kind of makes them sneeze.
Stimulates the sneeze reflex.
And they will get it out. But just in case those kind of things don't work, a snot sucker of some sort is really valuable, as well as gloves and cording and a way to keep the baby dry. But really, if you have a stuck baby that you have to assist with, you want to make sure that you have gloves so that you don't introduce bacteria into the dough. And sometimes I haven't really had to do this. I've tried to use a kid puller before, but I find that the kid puller that I had a couple years ago when I really needed it was way too bulky, and really a good cord to get in there and maybe loop around a leg or something and just hold it out of the way while you maneuver the rest of the kid can be really, really helpful. So those are the main things that I would suggest you have: a snot sucker, a cord, and a good towel. When you say cord, you're talking about like nylon paracord. Yeah. Like flexible cord, so that you can get it around a small goat hoof or something, just to give you an extra bit of leverage, because it's a very tight space. I was looking on my table here for a mason jar, but it's like having a wide mouth mason jar and grabbing something and then trying to pull it out. If you've got something in your hand, it's really hard to get it out of the opening, because you're not only going inside the fleshy part of the dough. I mean, her pelvis is right there, and there's no expanding that for anything. And so if you've got, your hand, you can loop the cord around something and help you pull, especially a man with larger hands. That could be life-saving. What is the best thing and the worst thing about a freeze dryer for your family? I saw this comment earlier, and I could not think of a worst thing. Worst thing besides the cost. Like, the cost, it's expensive. It's not necessarily a downside. It's something that I expected. So I wouldn't call it like it's the worst. Our freeze dryer stays outside running right now, and you don't know. In a climate controlled shed. Yeah, it's climate controlled, and it is kind of loud. I wouldn't necessarily want it running inside. There are people that do have them running inside, but if you've got like a larger house with like a mudroom or something that's kind of set off to the side, that would be fine. But it puts out a lot of heat. And that's not necessarily bad in wintertime, because in our shed right now we're killing two birds with one stone. I can run it and also heat the place, and so I'm not spending as much on running the space heater in there. But if it was running inside our house during the peak preservation season, that would put a lot of strain on our air conditioner, because I say that our house is made of cardboard. It is literally insulated with newspaper in the ceiling. It takes a lot to cool down our house anyway in summertime.
Yeah.
If I had that running in here, that would definitely be a downside, but I don't have it running in here. Thankfully, that shed is nice and insulated. More better than our house, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And what are the upsides?
Like, aside from the obvious that it, preserves food forever.
It does preserve food well. One of the things that I have really enjoyed in the last year is being able to create things that I was previously purchasing that were quite expensive. So I just processed some goat livers and kidneys and things to make a vitamin supplement, a liver supplement for some of my deficiencies that I feel like I have. And in the past, I have purchased a greens powder for the same thing. And those things at the health food store are very expensive. And these things on a homestead are often thought of not with, homesteaders, like people like us, but a lot of people, when they think of processing a meat animal, they only think about the muscling of the animal. They don't think about harvesting the organs as something beneficial, or they don't think about taking the greens off of the broccoli plant and using that in any kind of way. So where it's waste, that freeze dryer has made it so we can use those waste products and make some equivalently expensive things in order to increase the nutrition. And so I feel like that has been awesome, because we could dehydrate things and still get the same effect essentially, except for the freeze dryer really preserves the maximum amount of nutrients. And when we're working this hard to grow our own food, I think getting the most out of it is really what we want to do.
What is your mineral program for the goats, and do you have specific brands or formulas that you would recommend?
So I buy a loose mineral at our local feed store. It's by Combach. It's made for goats specifically. And they haven't been going through that as much since we got the cobalt block this year. We had a situation with a couple of our goats where they were low on the mineral cobalt, and it made their rumen not produce B vitamins as it should. There are microbes in their gut that produce their own B vitamins, but when they don't have enough cobalt, they're unable to produce the B vitamins, and it creates a cascade of issues for the goat. And one of the side effects was horrible, bitter tasting, gross milk straight from the udder. I went out there with a jar, milked the goat out into a cup and drank it, and it was so gross. But getting that cobalt block, which was expensive, it was about $60 after shipping because I couldn't find it locally, but man, that was worth every single penny. Because ever since we had that out, it took a couple weeks to really start seeing a change in the milk, but now our milk will last several weeks, 5 to 6 weeks in refrigeration, and taste just like the day that it was milked. Super, super fresh. And so that has had a lot of value because I'm able to hold on to a little bit more of the milk for a little bit longer and make butter and cheese and things with a larger amount of milk. So it's been great. But the loose mineral, the cobalt, I do give a Bosi injection. So far I've only given it in the fall. That is selenium and vitamin E. And I also give copper bolus. That I give twice a year. And my standard goats get 8 grams. My mini goats get 6 grams. And the Nigerian dwarves get 4 grams of copper. And the kids around 25 pounds will get 2 grams. That I do twice a year.
What are some of your long-term goals for the farm?
I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. A lot of people ask 5 years. What would we like to do in the next 5 years?
So recently, starting the first full week of January here, I have started having Mondays off to be here at home, and every other Tuesday I have off. I would like maybe by 5 years to be at least closer to just being home and just helping to run and do everything we have going on here, and homeschooling the kids and all that.
Yeah, in 5 years though, we'll have almost 18. You'll have an almost graduate.
I know. And then
which is crazy.
Eventually, the idea would be for work to be here, not elsewhere. which
Like
is sort of
admin stuff.
bittersweet for me because I really enjoy what I do. So
well, there's plenty of
there's
construction to do around here. Maybe in 5 years we'll be closer to the vision of our home build.
Yeah.
Because we think that this is further out than 5 years, but we do want to build a house on this property. In the back corner, we've kept it bare. There's nothing out there. The things that we put on the property, we have that in mind. Like, hey, we need to be able to put a driveway here, and so we're not putting anything in the way of where our driveway is going to be in, I don't know, 10, 15 years.
Something like that.
But I think that you could end up being home way more often, much sooner than 5 years from now. But just within the next 5 years. That's a good goal.
How much was your total cost for your new barn addition? Do we want to get into the palette of bedding as well?
Yes.
Or with that, I'm trying to think of what other additional recent... It was probably $3,500, I think.
Yeah.
Probably right around $3,500.
Yep. But you did all the work.
Right.
So there wasn't any labor cost involved.
$3,500 and a pulled pork dinner.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we did have friends. We did have friends over to help put on the roof. Things that Levi did the majority of it, and like that's so valuable to have the skills to be able to put something together nicely like that.
And enjoy doing it.
And enjoy doing it and want to do more. Because what did you say when you finished it?
So one of the members had asked or said something to the effect of, I bet you're glad that project is done. And no, not really. Like, I enjoyed doing it. I want to just move on to the next one. But, finances have to catch up first.
Right. Yes. That took everything extra that we had to put that in. And we did get a question, too, that I didn't necessarily put in the lineup because I thought it could kind of flow with this question about, do you live on a budget? And I think that's an interesting question because I thought everyone did. I know that everybody's budgets are at different levels. We do have a minimum that's needed in order for us to survive. And we have 3 different income streams that come in. And one of the income streams that is pretty reliable takes care of all of that. And then the other 2 really are above and beyond our basic needs. And we can use that depending on what our needs are on the homestead. And that barn, it's been falling apart for a little while, and so really that needed some attention. I do need some more space for my larger goats to kid. I did need more space for hay storage and things, and we'll get into this in a little bit, but eventually we're going to be repairing some of the parts on the barn and stuff, but we can't just do it all willy-nilly. We have to take time because we've got to wait for that money to become available. I'm trying to do everything, all the goals and stuff that we want for around the farm as debt-free as we can. So we do have to wait on more barn repairs, but they're coming.
How is the pine pellet layer working out in your barn addition? Did it get wet and expand? And if so, what do you both think of it?
I like it.
I think we need to wait for a week above freezing to really know.
It's true.
Because I walked in there yesterday and I am almost certain that everything under what we laid is frozen solid.
Yeah.
Because it feels very well packed, but I don't think it actually is.
It's true. Springtime is going to be the real tell. But I do have a friend that used that exact stuff in some very muddy areas on her farm. And I don't know how many layers it took. She's got one of those like dog cages, right? Those like dog pens. In the middle of it is a rabbit hutch, and it's open, and the mama rabbit can run around the whole thing, and it has like a canopy over top. It's really cool. And the rabbit, it used to, like, it was muddy in there, but she laid down those pine pellets, and it's elevated now, and it's dry, and it's really nice. And so I think it's going to work out well, simply because they're in the same area as us with the same problems as us, and it worked well for them. So far, so good, though, I will say.
Which animals are on your retirement plan, and how do you decide which animals to retire on your farm forever?
So we have a rabbit that the kids like. Oh, 2 rabbits really. Abraham was our first rabbit. He got him in 2020. He's still usable as a buck. Bucks will breed a lot longer than does. We did retire our first rabbit doe last year, Fluffles, and really we just kind of determine who's gonna retire here on pasture and not retire to the freezer based on, like, are we connected to them? Are they like a heart animal to us? So we have Fluffles. Abraham will be, retired. out here whenever he decides he doesn't want to breed anymore. Christine is already retired out on pasture. And the next oldest doe that will retire out on pasture is Margie. And then there's Elpis. Elpis is very young, so it'll be a while. By the time Elpis and maybe Margie retires, it just sort of depends, Christine will have just died of old age. So it's not that I'm keeping a whole bunch of animals behind. Like, they will kind of, you know, cycle out as they naturally would. But so far, I believe that is all my, like, for sure I'm keeping them animals. I might keep Nefarious just because he's kind of like a souvenir. But I can't say that I'll never buy another blue cactus goat. I probably will. And so I could sell him easily, probably, and kind of revolve our genetics around here. And I have to worry about space. Like, you can't keep them all, unfortunately. But yeah, it's just a heart connection thing.
Why did you guys decide on goats for milk versus getting a mini milk cow?
I don't care if it's mini, it's still big. I can barely handle some of those goats. And that's really why. Like, I did want a milk cow when we had the farm, but we didn't move here yet, and I was doing a little bit of planning. And then I came down here in 2019. He was deployed in the military, and I needed to take care of the farm for the summer because the previous owners had moved out. And our neighbors have cows, and I stood next to the cow, and I had grown up next to cows. One of my close friends growing up had a dairy, but I had forgotten how big cows were. And because he was in the military, in 2019, I don't know that we had any kind of hope or vision of you getting out of the military. Did we?
I knew that was my last contract.
Okay. Well, we knew that there was still time in that last contract, and being gone frequently, I knew that I didn't want to have large animals that I couldn't handle myself. So it's the reason that we got the small pigs that we did, the kuni-kunis. Is one of the reasons that we got the goats, but really we were eating goat dairy products anyway at the time. And so it just made sense. And just for their size and for the fact that we were already eating that kind of dairy. I do have a whole video that I made on exactly why we didn't want to go with a cow that explains it in more detail. I'll link that below.
What are your goals for this year?
So the second he said, "Oh no, what project am I going to do now?" Now that the thing was done, I said, well, I have some ideas. So do you still want to do the gazebo thing?
I do.
Okay, you want to explain that?
So essentially, I want to make a detached deck behind our house with picnic tables and essentially an outdoor kitchen, like, corner that'll be shielded from the wind for the smoker and our Blackstone grill. And then just an area that when the weather's nice, we can make dinner and then just sit out there and enjoy a meal.
Yeah, screened in and stuff.
Screened in, roof, like covered with a roof.
Mm-hmm.
And
it'll be really nice. I'm excited for that, for sure. So there's that. And then as soon as we put the extension on the barn, I looked at not that our boy goats are in anything that is harmful to them or whatever, but they're living in little pallet shelters, and I said, you know, we could build them a little barn. We could build them a buck barn. That's better than what they have right now, that we can actually walk into. Their current shelters, I have to kind of crouch down to fill their hay feeder and stuff. We could do better, and I think that this could be the year for that. But really, before the boys get their bachelor pad, we really need to fix the roof on the big barn.
yeah.
The roof leaks horribly. It needs the new metal, and it's called laving, right?
Yeah.
It needs some new wood, and we need to fix the pitch, because right now it's pretty flat, and that's one of the problems with it leaking. And then there's walls on the barn that needs redoing. It essentially needs the whole outside redone, and that needs to happen before we put a boy barn in.
Yeah.
So those are the, like, build type things. We might put in a more permanent fence where I've got the boys in some electric netting. We talked about that.
Yep.
I'm going to put in a little garden on the north side of that new barn extension. I'm going to put some shade-loving plants over there, because we don't have a lot of shade on our farm, so it's hard for us to grow things that like a lot of shade, because it's just, there's none to be had. It's a blessing and a curse, for sure.
Did you live in military housing when Levi was in the forces? If you were, do you miss the community that you were a part of? I think the question assumes that we don't have community here, and even if it doesn't, that's just kind of how I read it.
Okay.
We do. Like, it's not that we don't have community anymore or that we lost something by moving off post.
Right.
And whatever community we did have when we lived on post, either in Colorado or Kansas, was just very different than the community we have now, because our lifestyle is completely different than it was then. So while there were aspects of, especially when we lived in Kansas, we had some really good neighbors that we did spend a lot of time with. Our kids hung out with them all the time. It was nice to have somebody, 6 feet away from your house that you could just go and ask, hey, can I borrow a cup of sugar? Hey, do you want to hang out? There's a lunar eclipse tonight. Do you want to watch it? Whatever. That was fun, but I really appreciate what we have here, and I can't say that I necessarily miss living on post.
I don't miss living on post for anything, but I do miss some of the friends. Now, those people, they're people, and they're still awesome whether or not they're in the military. There's a different type. You make friends really fast. Like stuff happens fast, and it happens hard in the military because you're there for such a short amount of time. And my friends were I was much closer to people when we lived in Kansas. That was a much better community for me. For some reason, there just wasn't community at Fort Carson.
No, it was a very quiet neighborhood.
We didn't get to know very many people. Some of the people that we did get to know, it just didn't pan out. It's the nicest. For all I know, these people found us some random video on YouTube and they follow and they don't say anything because they might, but...
Do you miss the community that you were a part of?
I don't miss the military life at all, or the military community or anything. You couldn't pay me any amount of money to get back into it or anything, but we've got something here that there's no kind of longing for anything else. You're right, yeah.
If you could start over with the greenhouse, what would you have done differently besides raised beds?
I don't know. That is such a good question.
Maybe run power from the get-go.
Yeah, to run power initially. The things that we thought maybe we wanted to do, we did do eventually. Yeah. And I don't think there's anything else over there. When we set it up, we intentionally looked at all because there's a bunch of greenhouses around us. The Amish grow a lot of their own food and they've got a ton of greenhouses. I looked at every single greenhouse we passed. What direction is that facing? And they were all going north to south, all of them. And I was like, well, there has to be a reason for that, because I wasn't sure how to situate mine. And it also works out that our land, the water kind of runs through the greenhouse. I feel like if we had put it this way and the water ran over the rows, we could end up with sort of a flood situation, and it could have been a really big mess. And thankfully it's not.
You just got lucky on that one.
Yeah, we didn't really pay attention to the way that the water flowed, but maybe other people did, and that's why they do it north-south. I was more worried about the wind, because we've got a lot of wind pressure here. And I was thinking, well, is it better to put broadside to the wind or skinny side to the wind? And we decided to put broadside to the wind.
Which, given its shape, I think makes
the
most sense.
It does, and it's been through some wind. It's been fine.
What is the plan for Chloe?
Why do you seem sad? Chloe's a happy pig. Chloe is such a good pig. So if you are not familiar with Chloe, she's our Cooney pig that we got from a friend. And we got her because the friend is moving, and she wanted Chloe to go to a home where Chloe would never become food. And you can't really guarantee that when you just give them to any random person, because they might not stay there for very long, and who knows. And so I said, I'll take Chloe. We'll never sell her. We'll never eat her. And so we have Chloe right now in the pig pen. And in, 4-6 weeks, she's going to have some friends. And she'll hang out with them. If the big pigs, when they get bigger, end up bullying on her, we'll pull her out. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that growing up with Chloe, that they'll get along quite well. The eventual goal is I would like to have Chloe roaming more than what she is. I don't want her to necessarily live out there full time. Now, she is used to being a lone pig. The farm she was at, she was a lone pig. Sometimes she was kept in her area, which was quite big, but it was sort of set aside. She's used to being alone. Not that that's a super happy thing, but right now she is surrounded on 4 sides by goats, and she seems to be really happy. She has the goats as her companions. I would love to have her more around our our house area, but there's some things I need to block off because I don't want her ruining some of our gardens and things. I don't really want to let her out with the buck goats right now because my bees are out there, and the goats are okay with the bees. I worry a little bit about Chloe with the bees because pigs like to scratch on things, and the way that some of our hives are right now, she could literally knock over. It would be horrible. I just can't even with it. So there's just some infrastructure that I want to get in place to sort of move her around and keep her a little bit close to the house. But she's a pet and she'll be here for a long time. Pigs live, kunis live for a very long time.
What was the motivation for yourself and Levi to start down this road of homesteading?
This property.
Yep. My parents live in Tennessee outside of city limits, and every time we'd come to visit, we would go and just shoot into the woods, into the hillside behind their property off the porch. And that's something that I knew I wanted. I knew I wanted enough property outside of city limits where I could just target practice. That was for a long time, and especially when we lived in Colorado, I would go out into the mountains. There was a couple shooting ranges out there. And
you'd be gone the afternoon.
Essentially, some people call it lead therapy, whatever. Just relax, enjoy the day, whatever, go shoot, target practice. But yet it would take the better part of a day to go to the range. When we lived in Kansas, I don't know if I ever went out once to shoot, but that was I only was in Kansas for a year because we were in Europe for the other half of the time we were there. But that was like as far as my brain could see into the desire for property was just somewhere to shoot. A range where I wouldn't have to leave for the day and pay, $10, $15, $20 to go to the range.
And with the reloading too, you've done a couple things where you've changed the weight of the grain or whatever and wanted to test it real quick and then make adjustments and then test it real quick, which is not...
The grain is the unit of measurement.
Yes, don't you have it?
It would be like saying changing the weight of the ounce.
You change the grain.
The grain weight of the powder.
Yes.
Yeah. I knew what you meant.
They probably did too.
Some of them did.
But to change how much grain.
How much powder.
Yeah, that's really all he wanted. I just knew I wanted a few chickens, which you could have in the city limits, or you can have 4 hens, and that would have made me happy. And then this property became available, and it had the barn, and it had the gardens, and it had the chicken coop with power, and a few different outbuildings, and a fence. They had left the electric fence here, and so with the acreage that we were able to afford, that I did not anticipate being able to afford, that's when really the desire to start really doing this got lit. The fire was lit, and it never went out.
What were some of your trials and struggles with homesteading while also being in the military?
Well, it's kind of funny because I came in 2019, like we talked about, and then in December 2019, he got back from his deployment and we officially moved all of our stuff. And then we didn't have a normal military life at all because then it was COVID in 2020. So there was like kind of all of a sudden all of this free time that was paid free time to put in things like fencing and whatnot. It never was kind of a normal military life with homesteading.
Since we've moved here in the end of 2019, it was a very abnormal experience as far as being in the military and homesteading. The aspect of it that was par for the course military, though, was it's just unpredictable. And we knew that was going to be just an increased difficulty. You can make plans on the homestead like, hey, on, such and such a date, we're going to fence in this area because we're getting more animals, whatever. And then the military can say, on such and such a date, you're deploying to fill in the blank, or we're going to the field for 2 weeks or whatever. And your time is snatched away from you that you thought you had. So that there was a lot of anxiety wrapped up in that, and just wanting to plan and do things and not being certain if we really could.
Yeah, it was really like a defeating thing, like to have this, but also not be able to experience it because they very frequently, we felt like the rug got ripped out from under us with stuff. There was a time when this was really hard, and might be hard to hear. I had a goat giving birth, and he was on CQ. And military people know what that is, but basically you're there on like 24-hour duty to watch over the barracks.
Guard, yeah. Essentially, it's a 24-hour guard duty.
Yeah. Normally births go fine. I don't want to freak anyone out. This birth did not go fine, and I had to put down the doe and give her an emergency C-section. It was awful. The doe and the kid both died, but it had poured. I'm talking torrent, poured down rain all day. Miraculously, my kids were fine inside watching cartoons. I don't know what they were doing. And I was out in the barn, but then I had a 160-pound goat that I had like flayed open, okay, to get the baby. It was a mess. How was I supposed to clean this up by myself? I literally couldn't. I literally could not. So I called him and I said, I don't care what you have to say. This is the situation and you have to come home. You have to help me. I cannot do this. I can't pick her up. I can't do, like, what am I supposed to do? The only thing I could think to do was to take her out in pieces, and that was stupid.
Yeah. And at the time, I was the supervisor on duty and had to leave my subordinate there at the desk in charge of, anything that happened. Technically, the statute of limitations should be good. I was not supposed to leave post, technically, because, I don't know, somebody with a hair up their butt would have called that abandoning the post. However,
not coming home. That would have felt like abandoning the post. So, and
but I didn't abandon because, like I said,
you left
the
someone
subordinate
qualified
soldier
there.
was there.
He was fine.
And it wasn't permanent or
the
whatever.
thing that he was dealing with was not the same as the thing that we were dealing with at the time. And that was a rough situation that, had you been like actually deployed, I probably would have gotten the neighbor. But like I said, it was pouring down rain. Like, it would have been inconvenient for everyone. I would have felt like a major inconvenience to everyone around me and felt like more of a failure than I already did at that rate. To feel like, I can't do this because I don't have the capability to deal with a situation like that. And that's something to think about to people who are new in homesteading. In that kind of a situation, what would you do?
Yeah.
Because those situations do happen.
You don't necessarily catastrophize, but understand that catastrophe does happen.
It does.
Will you recommend a cheese book for a newbie?
So, I have a cheese book. It's called Artisan Cheesemaking, and I think I saw someone else recommend it. I got it, and I've tried a couple things. I can't say that I would recommend it necessarily. I know that was an anti-recommendation. But the way that I learned cheese making was just using the recipes off of the New England Cheesemaking Company online. You could print it out and put it in a little folder and you'd have a book. And those recipes have worked really awesomely for me. And I also really like the YouTube channel Jennifer Murch. I think it might be Milk Slinger at this point. She had it in her own name for a little bit and then she changed it. Really, really awesome resource for stuff like that. I believe she also has printable recipes, but don't quote me on that. However, I don't have like a already like printed and bound book recommendation because it's not something that I really use. I make the same cheeses over and over and over again because I found something that I liked. It's a Colby cheese. I will also link that in the description box. So good. It works perfectly for so many applications, and so that's what I make. That and mozzarella and chev all the time. Oh no, I left it on. That's okay. You guys, we're at the end of our question and answer, and when I am done with the Q&A, every time we do a Q&A, I like to do a little giveaway for those of you that have made it to the end. And I got a couple sets of these electric hand warmers. They charge with that. What's this charger called?
USB-C.
A USB-C. And they're amazing. I love them. I use them all the time. They're really great to be able to pinpoint, if my elbow is hurting me, I can just put a little bit of heat right there. It's so nice. I want to give a set of these away. I will probably just ship them to you straight from Amazon. So tell me, in this week of the cold that we had, in order to enter yourself in the giveaway, what was your lowest low in your area this year? And in 1 week, I will go live and we'll do a little bit of a chitty chat, and I will pick live the winner for the electric hand warmers, and I'll send them out to you. I did get another couple questions about goats, like why we chose the La Mancha breed and what do I do about vaccinations for my pregnant does. If you happen to not see that video that I just posted earlier this week, I'll link that right here. We'll see you guys again soon.
Guess I could have said bye.
You want to say bye?
Nope.
Say bye.
Nope.
Bye.
You can't make me.